Hi and welcome. My name is Julianne Cost, and in the next few minutes we're going to take a look at how we can create a book in Lightroom using the book module. Now, the first thing you might notice here is that I've made a collection of images, and in that collection I've actually sequenced my files. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I just find that in the library module I have a lot more space to move around and create my custom sort order, so I tend to do that here. The other thing that you might want to think about is over here in the metadata area, you can see that I actually have a title for each one of these images. If I didn't want to add a title, I could add a caption. And the great thing about adding either of these pieces of information is that when I go to the book module can automatically grab all of this information and add it underneath each photograph. So those are just two things you might want to keep in mind before you actually go to the book module. But let's go ahead and click on the book module now, and you can see that it will automatically start laying out a book. Now, that does depend on your preferences, so if yours doesn't do this, don't worry, because I'm actually going to scroll to the top because I think we can create a kind of more interesting book than just the default here. So what I'm going to do is up at the top, I'm going to click where it says Clear Book, and we'll just start from scratch. All right. Up at the top where it says Book Settings, you'll notice that you have three different options here. We can either create a book and print it to blurb, or we can create a book in order to create a PDF file or JPEG files. So I'm going to start by creating a blurb book. You can see that we have a number of different sizes here. We've got some square books as well as some landscape and portrait books. I'll go ahead and select the standard landscape for now. And then we can choose from three different cover types. In this case, I want a hardcover image wrap, but just know that you could have a book that has a dust jacket, or you can order a softcover book. Then for paper type, you'll want to select either a matte or glossy paper, and there are a variety of different levels of paper here. I actually prefer the Pro line, and since these images are quite vibrant, I'm going to go with the Pearl Photo. We can also choose to turn on a logo page, and you'll notice that when I have this on, the estimated price is around $48. If I turn this off, the estimated price will go up to almost $56. And all the logo page does is it adds a logo on the last page, so I'm definitely going to save myself a little money if I turn that on. Now let's take a look at the auto layout area. Now before I set these presets up, what I want to do is I want to go into the book menu here, and I want to come down to the book preferences. I just want to make sure that my layout options, the default photo zoom, is zoom to fit. I don't actually want Lightroom to enlarge my image and crop it if it's not at the correct aspect ratio. I can of course choose to do that on a per image basis later. You can see here where I have the Start New Books by autofilling. That's why when I moved to the book module, Lightroom automatically created the book for me. So if you want to, you can choose to turn that off. And then here in the text options where it says Fill Text Boxes With, I'm going to make sure that this says Title Metadata, because remember, I added titles to each one of these images back in the library module. All right, let's close that, and then I'll choose to edit my auto layout presets. Here we can see that we have options for the left pages and the right pages. In this case, I'll keep it simple. I'm going to keep the left pages set to the same as the right side. Then on the right side, I have all of these different options that I can choose from. So for example, if I wanted to see the templates that had 3 photos per page, I would select that, and then we can scroll down through it. And Lightroom ships with over 180 different templates. If you're doing something like a book for a wedding or travel or portfolio, Lightroom has also kind of gathered together the typical templates that you might want to use for those kinds of books, so you can select those as well. For now, we'll just select a simple 2 photo per page, and I like this template right here, so we'll select that. I'm going to make sure here under the Add Photo Text, I wanted to align it with the photo, and I'm going to use a text style preset. You can see that Lightroom ships with some default ones. I just want to make sure right now that it is sans serif. Now, since I didn't make any changes to my preset, I can simply select Done, but yours might say that it's been edited here, in which case if you want to save this because you think you're going to use it later, you would come down and save the current settings as a new preset. I'm just going to call mine Test right now, and then click Create, and then Done, and now we can see that Test appears as one of my presets. All right, once we've made the changes we want to the preset, I'll click Auto Layout, and Lightroom will automatically take all of the images that are in my film strip and lay them out in a book. All right, we'll scroll to the top here, and let's take a look at how we would navigate this book. At the top, we have our front and back covers, and then we have the individual pages. Now, if I want to see a double page spread, all I would need to do is select the spread and then click on this middle icon down here. If I want to see a single page, then I click on the third icon. Of course, all of these also have shortcuts. If I use Command E, then I'm going to view all of the pages. Command R will show me a double page spread, and Command T will show me a single page. Of course, on the Windows platform, you would use the Control key instead. All right, let's go back to viewing all of our pages. And if I wanted to make the thumbnails larger, I could use the plus icon, and here I don't need a keyboard modifier, or I could use the minus icon in order to make them smaller. I can also hide this left-hand panel, and that's going to enable me to have a little bit more space to see all of my pages. If I want to quickly navigate to a page, I can also just double-click on that page in order to view it. All right, we'll use Command E again to view all of our pages. And let's start working on the cover page. Here you'll notice if I double-click, I don't actually see a single page, but I see the entire cover. If I want to change this template, I can use the arrow right here in order to select from all of the different cover options that Lightroom provides. I'm just going to scroll down and select a template that has one large photo on the right, plus some text, as well as some smaller icons over here on the left. I'm just going to scroll down here and select maybe this template right here. Here we can see that I can have a large photograph, although right now I would probably want to click on that photograph and actually zoom in, or I could right mouse click and I could automatically choose Zoom Photo to Fit Cell if I wanted Lightroom to do that for me. Then I can click and drag in order to reposition that photo on my front cover. This other area right here is where I could add photo text. But right now, I don't really like the way that this photo is situated. So what I want to do is I want to replace the photo. So from my film strip, I'm just going to click on an image and drag and drop it on the front cover. Then again, I'll right mouse click and zoom the photo to fit the cell, and then click and drag in order to reposition it. Now you can see that Lightroom automatically brought over the text from the title, and I actually want to change that. In this case, I want to type in window seat and then photography by Julianne Cost. Now I want to change the font size of this type, so I will click and swipe the words window seat, and then using the type panel, I can make my changes. So in this case, I will increase the character size. I'm going to make it rather large here. I'm also going to change the font to be bold. And then I will click and select the photography by Julianne Cost, and I'm just going to add a little bit of tracking to add some space between those characters. Now, you might think that these templates are a little bit constraining because when I add the text here, it doesn't look like I can move it around, but in fact I can. So if we scroll down even further, you'll notice, for example, that I could make my text left aligned, center aligned, or right aligned. Or I could move up here to the cell options, and I can actually change the amount of padding. Now by default, the padding is linked. So if I moved like the top slider here, you can see that they all move together. And I don't really want that. So I'm going to uncheck the link all. And I just want to move this text down a little bit. So now when I move the top slider, you can see that it moves down and repositions the text for me. In addition, if I wanted to move it left or right, we could simply move one of those sliders as well. Now I want to start to work on the back page here, but in order to do so, I'd actually like to see all of these little cells. So I'm going to go to my Guides area, and I'm going to turn on the Show Guide option. You can see that Lightroom placed one image in one of these cells, but I want to obviously fill them all up with images, but I don't really want to do it one at a time. So in my film strip, I'm going to select my first image, And then I'm going to scroll over and hold down the Shift key while I select all of the images in my film strip. Then I'll click and drag into the first cell, and we can see that Lightroom has dropped all of those different images into each one of these cells. Now on this page, I would really like to quickly select all of the cells, so I'll go to the Edit menu and then select all photo cells. Now I want to be a little careful here because Lightroom actually selected all of the cells on both pages. So I'm going to hold down the Command key or the Control key on Windows and just deselect the cell on the right-hand side. Then, because all of these cells are selected, I can right mouse click and choose Zoom Photos to fit cells, and now they're all filling the full square. Of course, if I want to change the position of any of these, I'll just click outside the cells so that I deselect them all, then click on one and simply click and drag in order to reposition that photo within the cell. Now at this point, let's go ahead and view all of our pages again. So I'll use Command E in order to do that because I want to show you how easy it is to change the order of your images. So remember at the beginning, I mentioned in the library module, I did create a custom sort order, but if I just want to reorder two pages, that's as easy as selecting the page by clicking on the number and then just dragging it over, and you'll see this yellow line, this highlight. As soon as you see that, when you drop that page, it will go ahead and reorder it. If I want to select two pages, I hold down the Command key to select both of them, and then I can drag and drop that in order to reorder both of those pages. Now if I want to swap two images on a page, well, let's zoom in, so I'll double click on page 4, and then I can just click and drag in order to swap those two photos within a page. If we're looking at a double page spread and I want to swap photos, then I can drag and drop between the two spreads. If I wanted to actually change out a photograph, then I could click from anywhere in my film strip and drag and drop it on top of an image, and it would replace that image. And if I just decide that I don't want a page any longer, I can simply right mouse click anywhere in the page outside of the photographs, and I could go ahead and remove this page. For now, I'll go ahead and keep it. All right, now that we've spent some time in the book module, it might be wise for us to save this book. So up at the top right here where it says Create Save Book, I'll select that, and I'll call this my Window Seat Book. And I want to put it inside the book creation collection that I have, and then I'll choose to create. And let's take a look at what Lightroom did. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see even though I'm in the book module, I can see all of my collections. When we entered the book module, I had the book creation collection selected. Now that I've saved this book, I actually have the window seat book saved right here. And this is great because this means that I can go back over to the library, I can start working on other projects, and if I ever want to return back to this project in exactly the state it's in right now, all I need to do is select this window seat book creation. All right, one of the things that I am noticing is that all of the text in here is a little bit too large. So again, I'm going to back out so that I can see all of the pages using Command E or Control E. And then I'm going to choose under the Edit menu to select all of my text cells. The only thing that I have to be careful with is that you'll notice that on my cover page, that text cell was also selected, and I don't want to modify it. So I'm going to hold down the Command key, Control key on Windows, and simply click in order to deselect that cell. Now we can return to the Type panel, and I can change the character size here. So instead of 24 points, let's see what happens if I change this down to about 8 points. Now let's zoom in on a page, so I'll use Command R in order to see the page. Then I'll use the right arrow here in order to move to the next page. And again, and now we can see that the type has become much smaller, although it's still center aligned, and I want to change that as well. Now, I wanted to point out though, if I'm in a double page spread like I am right now, and I go to the Edit menu and I select all text cells, I'm only selecting the text cells that I see right here. So if I made the change, for example, to make the text right aligned, you'll notice that this is only going to affect this page. If I move to the next page, they're center aligned again. So we would just zoom out or go back to viewing the multi-page view, use Edit, select all text cells, use the Command key or the Control key to deselect that one text on the front page or the front cover of the book, and then we'll change our text to be right aligned. Now, as you spend more time with type and you actually decide on certain fonts and certain sizes and everything, you should just be aware that you can actually save any of the settings here in the type panel as a preset. And you would just do that by selecting this menu and then saving the current type settings as a new preset. All right, let's go ahead and just click in this gray area to deselect. And then I want to view this double page spread right here. So I'll select it and then use Command R in order to see that double page spread. And although I like the template that I've used on the left-hand side, I want to change the template on the right side. So the easiest way to do this is just to click on the downward pointing triangle right here and then change your template. I still want 2 photos per page, so I'll leave this selected at 2 photos, but I'm going to scroll down, and instead of having them next to each other on the left and right, I actually want them to be on top of each other, top and bottom. So let's go ahead and try this template. And I like this template, except there seems to be a little problem with the caption that's added or the title that's added right underneath that. So let's just double click so we can see it a little bit larger, and now we'll make a change to this template. So what I want to do is I want to move the 2 photographs just up a little bit so that there's a little bit more space in between them. So I'll select one, hold down the Command or the Control key, and then select the other one. And then we can scroll up and go back to the Cell panel. I'll unlink all of the padding, and then I just want to move the bottom up a little bit, and you can see that just adds a little bit of space. Now the captions that it added are a little bit too far down, so I'm going to select both of those, again by holding down the Command or the Control key and clicking on both of them. And then I'm going to go over to the text area here, and you can see that I've selected the photo text, and it's got a little bit of an offset. I don't want that offset to be as large, so I'll just make it a little bit smaller. And you can see as I make the offset a little bit smaller, this text now looks like it's paired with the top image. Otherwise, it's a little bit confusing. All right, so let's just click to deselect that. And I just want to point out that I could also add some page text. So I'm not limited to only having photo text. I can actually add page text, and I can do that by either just clicking right where it says Add Page Text, or we could come over here and choose to add it this way by just enabling it. And don't worry that it looks like you can only have one line of text, because that's not true. As soon as you start typing, you'll notice that you can actually have multiple lines of text. You can have as much text as you want, and the page text will simply grow. In addition, of course, you can offset the page text just like you can the photo text. You can put it at the top or at the bottom, and then you can give it that offset. All right, excellent. So if you've spent some time and you've actually customized the template like we did, and you want to apply that template to multiple pages, we can right mouse click over here in the page area, and we can save this as a custom page. When we save this as a custom page, we now have the opportunity to apply it to multiple pages. So let's do that. Let's go to Command E or Control E in order to view multiple pages. I'm going to select this page, and then I will hold down the Shift key and click on page 20 to select all of those pages. And then I'll go over to the Page panel, and I'll use the flyout menu right here, and I'm going to choose where it says Custom Pages. Now you should just know that if you haven't saved a custom page yet, you won't see this option, but since we just did that, it's available. Then I'll select that page, and because all of those pages were selected, they're all changed at once. Now, one of the things that I also want to point out, because I really like the way Lightroom handles this, Lightroom has been saving all of these changes as we've been working. So once you save your book creation, Lightroom's keeping track of it. So if we go back to the library module, or we decide we want to work on something else and then come back, this state is the state that this book project will be in when we return to it. All right, so let's say we were now finished and we want to go ahead and export this book. There's a variety of different ways we can do that. Obviously, we set this book up in the beginning to print to blurb, so all I would need to do is click on the Send Book to Blurb option right here. And that would take me over to Blurb, where I would go ahead and sign in and then order the book. Now, I'm not going to walk through that right now, but I also want to show you, just before we wrap up, that you can also export the book to PDF. And I have found this to be really handy because by clicking to export the book to the PDF, and saving this has enabled me to actually just print it at home to just my low quality printer, but then at least I get a printout of it and I can actually go through it and just make sure that there aren't any mistakes. It's just kind of a nice way for me to proof the book before I actually send it off to Blurb. So there we go. There's an overview of how you would create a book in order to send it to Blurb in Lightroom. I just want to let you know that there's additional information on my blog underneath the Lightroom tutorial area. So if you need more advanced options for working in the book module, don't worry, all that information is also online. My name's Julianne Cost. Thanks for watching.